Well, gee, thanks, she said sarcastically, laughing at the embarrassment in her friend's voice and imagining the look on her face. Angie had to laugh in spite of herself. You are too much. If anyone didn't know better, they'd swear you were a young girl, fresh out of high school and having her first date. You are too much. Ange, I'm serious. I can't really explain it, but this is really bothering me. I know I probably sound silly, but I feel even sillier. Am I making too much out of nothing? What do you mean? Maybe this is all in my head. And worse, what if I'm imagining all of this and he's just being really polite and I'm the only one that, well, Nisi, I told you we all see the way he looks at you. It's not all in your head. William is crazy about you. And I think you're a lucky woman that that man found you. The Bible says, he that findeth a wife findeth a good thing. And I think he just found himself a gold mine because you are as good as it gets. Thanks, girl, said Denise with a heavy sigh. The panic that had settled in the pit of her stomach was practically gone. She was so grateful that she had Angie to talk to. And then she suddenly felt a stab of guilt, knowing she hadn't been totally honest to her longtime pal. She hadn't told her that she had seen the looks. She had seen the looks Will gave her when he thought she wasn't looking. She had been aware for quite some time that he was interested in her, but she refused to admit it, even to herself. At first, she was incredulous. How could this handsome man possibly be interested in her, a single widow with 6 children? She knew she was attractive, but he was fine. And the fact that he hadn't been married before made it even more impossible to believe that he was interested in her, since he was obviously a good catch for some other very lucky woman. What was it about her that attracted him, she wondered? What could it possibly be that would make a man like him want her? She was stumped and almost afraid to know the real reason. Surely he could do better. Not that she wasn't attracted to him as well. Shoot, what woman in her right mind wouldn't be? He was handsome, intelligent, loved the Lord, and loved children. All the kids at the school liked him, and her kids talked very highly of him. Oh, Lord, this man was taking up too much of her thought process. She had to do something to get her mind off of him, and she meant now. Okay, enough of this idle chatter. I've got some heads to bust, girl. So thanks for calling and thanks for listening. I'll talk to you later. Wait a minute, just like that? You're going to leave me high and dry just like that? Yep, just like that. That's enough reflection for one day, Miss Nosy. Oh, come on. I was just getting started. I want to know what he did that set you off. Come on, don't leave a girl hanging. You know what? You are incorrigible. She laughed as she got off the bed and walked to the door, listening for any sound from downstairs. She knew the boys were wondering when she was going to come and dole out their punishment. She decided to let them wait a little while longer. Not knowing what she was going to do would cause them to stay on their best behavior. She would get to them eventually, and she really didn't want to be too angry when she did. She was so disappointed with Matt, she couldn't even put it into words. But Jay was really pushing her patience to its breaking point. When she had seen that police officer at her door holding Jay by the arm, she was almost tempted to tell the cop to leave and to take Jay with him. Almost, but thank God Will was there. No, really, I have to go deal with these boys. I'll get back to you later this evening, I promise. Okay, you better. And Nisi, don't go so hard on Maddie. You know he's a good kid, and this is the first time he's ever gotten into trouble in school. Give him a chance to explain, listen to him, and then let the Lord direct you how you should handle it, okay? Okay, I will. And Nisi, as for Jay, he's been through a lot. I don't know of a lot of grown-ups that could go through what he went through and still be intact. You're all he has now. Remember, just remember that when you talk to him. I will. Thanks. Love you. Love you too. After she got off the phone, Nisi walked over to the mirror and stared long into her own eyes. What are you about to get yourself into, young lady? She thought to herself, shaking her head. She took a deep breath and headed downstairs to talk to Matt and Jay. When she reached the bottom of the stairs, she suddenly decided she didn't want to deal with the boys right then. She told Matt to go into the girls' room and stay there until they came home, and Jay was told to stay in his room until she called for him. Usually, this was the time of day that Denise would be either at her computer or tidying up after the kids. But the events of today had her suddenly feeling drained, and all she wanted to do was sit. Walking to the window, she could see that a handful of her neighbors were still standing across the street, and she knew Jay would be the topic of conversation on the block for quite a while. Shaking her head, she walked back over to her favorite chair and eased herself onto it with a heavy sigh. As expected, the talk with Matt was full of apologies and promises, and as expected, the talk with Jay was one-sided and received with insolence and indifference. Feeling her patience growing thin, Denise decided it would be best if she left the punishment off for another time. This, of course, was great for Jay. He felt in his own selfish way that it was a minor victory. He walked over to the window and looked at the kids coming home from school. Some were stopping to play basketball in their friends' backyards. Some were stopping and sitting on each other's steps, sharing news about the events of the day. And then he noticed that some were talking to their parents and looking at his house, no doubt being told about his latest infraction. He didn't care. As a matter of fact, he was glad. Glad the word was getting around and his notoriety was spreading. And he didn't care that his aunt was upset when she left his room. She ain't gonna do nothing to me, he thought to himself, feeling like he had just gotten away with murder. He felt like he was finally getting to the place he wanted to be. Soon, no one was going to pick on him again. No one was going to beat him up again, and no one was going to even look at him hard ever again. Soon, even his aunt wasn't going to mess with him. He knew his cousins hated him, but so what? Let them. He didn't ask to be here. They made him come here. They all walked around acting like they were so perfect, so happy, and so smart, hugging their mother, eating dinner, laughing at each other's jokes. He used to hug his mother, laugh at his sister's jokes, eat dinner with his family. He used to be happy. He used to have a home. Now he had nothing. He had to share somebody else's family, sleep in somebody else's bed, hug somebody else's mother. And it wasn't fair. It wasn't fair, and he hated them all. Why did his mother have to be taken away? He loved his mother, and she loved him. She loved him, and now she is gone, and he hated everybody. Everybody was always telling him what to do, where to go, how to act, and he hated them for it. He just wanted to be left alone. He used to think about running away, but deep inside he was afraid, and that made him even angrier. He was afraid. Only a baby was afraid, and he hated himself for being afraid. He hated himself for being lonely. He hated himself for missing his mother. He hated himself for caring. He hated himself for hurting other people. He hated himself for disappointing his sisters. He hated himself for not understanding why he hated himself. He hated himself for the tears he felt beginning to sting his eyes. He hated that at that moment he wanted to go to his aunt and have her wrap her arms around him, rest her chin on his head, and tell him everything was going to be all right, like he had seen her do to her own children. And most of all, he hated God for letting all these things happen. He turned away from the window and walked over to his bed and sat down just as Matt entered the room. Mom said to get your clothes ready for church tonight, and dinner will be ready at 6:30. Whatever, loser. Matt had no intention in getting into a verbal confrontation with Jay today. He was still so humiliated over his suspension from school that he wished he could change schools and never go back. He knew word had spread like wildfire, and he would have to work for like a dog to regain his reputation. Rife had called several times to speak to him, but his mother was fielding all calls, and he wasn't getting any for a few days. This, of course, was perfectly understandable, but it hurt nonetheless. He never thought he would be in this particular situation. Ned maybe, Jay for sure, but never him. Well, he had already begun to do damage control. He was mapping out ways to redeem himself in the eyes of his mother, his siblings, his teachers, and the coach. He was even going to make sure he repented to God fervently tonight when they went to church. Yes, he knew he had a lot of repenting and a lot of repairing to do, but he wasn't worried about because he knew he would soon be back in good graces with everyone. He was loved by everyone, and he knew it. He had a good life, and he was grateful. His family loved him. His friends loved him. His teachers loved him, and he knew God loved him. So he knew that this blemish in his spotless record would be a snap to clear up. He did, however, have one concern. Danny. She had tricked him, but good. He knew he was going to have to get a tongue lashing from his sisters, and he was going to let them. She had said all along Danny was not sincere with her feelings toward him, but had he listened? No. So he was going to let them say whatever they felt like saying, and he was going to take it. It would be good for him, he felt. And that was just a touch of what he felt he deserved after letting that silly girl make such a fool out of him. She and her friends must be laughing their heads off. Oh, what a fool he had been. But the saddest part was He really did have feelings for her. He was sure she was sincere, and he was so happy when they went to church together and when they walked into school together. And when she told him that she had given her heart to God, he felt like jumping over the moon. It made him feel especially low when he admitted to himself that he had instantly thought at that moment that this was going to be a great story they could tell their kids one day. And here she was playing with his emotions all along. Oh well, suck it up, buddy. You got played, and now it's time to get back on track, he thought to himself. This was not going to be an easy bounce back because his heart was really into this girl. But he was confident that God would give him the strength to pull through. His faith in God and his love and respect for his mother were his inspirations, and he knew they would not stop loving him no matter what. So he resigned himself to use this experience as a stepping stone and keep moving on. Mimi stood outside of the exit door to her sister's school and patiently waited for her little sister's class to emerge. She scanned the tiny faces of all the girls, looking for that little face that would light up like a Christmas tree when she spotted her big sister. It used to annoy her that she had to wait every day for Chrissy. Her class always seemed to be the last class to leave the building. It was the worst when it rained or when it was cold, but it was summer and Mimi loved feeling the sun on her skin, so it was no problem standing in the sun as she waited for her sister. She always felt anxious waiting for her sister, especially when her class took such a long time coming out of the building. She knew she was safe in the school, surrounded by all the teachers, but it was still a relief when she saw her little face appear at the door. She watched her as she ran to her and reached for her hand at the exact time Chrissy reached out for hers. With a contented sigh, she turned towards home as her sister began telling her all about her day. She left nothing out, and soon Mimi just pretended to hear her, letting out an occasional uh-huh and oh yeah to make her sister think she was listening. But then something her sister said caught her attention, and she was on full alert. My friend gave me another nickel today. What did you say? I said, my friend gave me another nickel today. Chris, you little gold digger, you have two giving you money now? No, it's the same friend. The same boyfriend? Yeah, the same one. He said he found two nickels and he wanted me to have one. Let me see your nickel, said Mimi, wanting to make sure her sister knew what a nickel was. Sure enough, Christine pulled out a nickel from her skirt pocket and proudly held it up for her sister's inspection. See? A whole nickel. Yep, it's a nickel all right. Well, kiddo, looks like you got yourself a real cool friend that wants to share his nickels with you. But I think you better not keep taking money from him. The next time he wants to give you a nickel, you say no thank you. Why? Because you know what Mommy used to say. She didn't want us to come home with things from other people. But this isn't things, this is money. Just the same, the next time he wants to give you money, you say no thank you. But I want the nickel. Chrissy, don't start whining. You can't take any more money from your friend, and that's that. But we was going to buy lollipops with it after school when we got enough money. I don't care. If you want money for a lollipop, I'll give you money. Besides, Aunt Nisi gives you money, so you don't need to be taking money from anybody. But he's my friend. If I said no, it might hurt his feelings. Mimi didn't respond to her sister because suddenly an alarm was going off in her head. She thought back to her sister telling her about a friend, and she tried to think what little boy in her church had befriended her sister. She wasn't aware of a little boy in the church that went to her sister's school and was in her class. Her sister told her all about her little friends, but she never mentioned a boy in her class that went to her church. She tried to remember if she had said her friend was from church or from school. She couldn't remember. Chrissy, what is your friend's name? I'm not telling. Why not? Because you might make him get in trouble for giving me one of his nickels. I promise I won't get him in trouble. No. Chris, if you don't tell me his name, I'm going to tell Aunt Niecy. You said what happens between sisters is between sisters. If you tell her, I won't tell you anything else. Mimi had stopped and was staring down into the defiant face of her little sister, not sure how to respond. She didn't like that Chris had her over a barrel, but knew she had promised she could tell her anything and she would keep it to herself. But she felt that feeling of fear she had dreamed about when she thought of her sister's little boyfriend. And then she felt foolish. What could she possibly fear from a little boy? So what if her sister was getting nickels from a classmate? What possible harm could that bring? She wasn't being silly. She couldn't let her paranoia alienate her sister from Hay. Okay, sorry. I was being a little silly goose. You don't have to tell me your little friend's name. But after you buy your lollipops, no more nickels, okay? Okay, Mimi.